Grace Rosewood stood in the marble lobby of Vanguard Holdings, her leather portfolio gripped tightly in one hand, and told herself this was just another pitch. The fact that she was about to present her architectural firm's designs to one of the wealthiest men in the country meant nothing. She had built her company from the ground up, taken every risk herself, and she would not be intimidated by money or power or the kind of commanding presence that made other people shrink. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Grace checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothing down her navy blazer. At 29, she had already made a name for herself in sustainable architecture, turning down partnerships and investors who wanted too much control. She liked being the sole decision maker. She liked answering to no one. The receptionist, a polished woman with silver hair, smiled warmly and gestured toward the massive double doors. "Mr. Vaughn is ready for you, Miss Rosewood." Grace walked through those doors and into an office that was all windows and light, the city spreading out below like a kingdom. And there, standing by the glass with his back to her, was Vincent Vaughn himself. He turned, and Grace felt something shift in her chest. She had seen photos, of course. Everyone knew what Vincent Vaughn looked like. But pictures did not capture the intensity of his gray eyes, the sharp line of his jaw, or the way he seemed to fill the space with quiet authority. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than her car payment, and when he smiled it was genuine. "Miss Rosewood," he said, his voice deep and warm. "Thank you for coming. Mr. Vaughn." She crossed the room, shaking his outstretched hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Thank you for the opportunity. Please sit." He gestured to the leather chairs arranged by his desk, but instead of sitting behind the desk like she expected, he took the chair beside her, casual, approachable. "I have to admit, your work impressed me. The community center you designed in Portland is remarkable." "Thank you." Grace opened her portfolio, spreading out the designs she had spent weeks perfecting. "I believe architecture should serve people, not just aesthetics." When you mentioned wanting to build affordable housing units across the city, I knew this was a project I wanted to be part of. For the next hour, they discussed plans and budgets, sustainability features and timelines. Vincent asked intelligent questions, challenged her assumptions in ways that made her think harder, and listened with complete attention. He was not what she expected. There was no arrogance, no dismissiveness. He treated her like an equal. "You really care about this," he said finally, leaning back in his chair. "Most architects who pitch to me talk about prestige and portfolios. You are talking about impact. Because that is what matters." Grace met his eyes. "I did not get into this field to make rich people richer. I got into it to change communities." Something flickered across his face, respect maybe, or interest. "I want you to lead this project." Grace felt her heart leap, but she kept her expression neutral. "I appreciate that, Mr. Vaughn, but I need to be clear about something. I work independently. My firm is small by design. I do not do well with oversight or micromanagement. If you are looking for someone who will check in constantly and defer to your opinions on everything, I am not your person." Vincent stood, walking to the window. For a moment she thought she had blown it. Then he turned back, and there was something almost amused in his expression. "Miss Rosewood, I did not build a multi-billion-dollar company by surrounding myself with yes men. I want people who challenge me, who have vision and conviction." He walked back toward her, his eyes holding hers. "Your independence is not a liability. It is exactly why I want you for this." Grace stood, gathering her portfolio. "Then I accept. On the condition that creative control remains with me. You can approve or reject the final designs, but the process is mine." "Agreed." He extended his hand again, and when she took it, He held on just a moment longer than necessary. "I have a feeling this is going to be an interesting partnership." Over the next 2 weeks, Grace threw herself into the project with the kind of focused intensity that made her assistant, Maya, threaten to physically remove her from the office. She sketched and revised, consulted with engineers and environmental specialists, and slowly, the vision took shape. Housing that was beautiful and functional, that gave people dignity without breaking the bank. Vincent called her directly on a Thursday afternoon. "I would like to see the progress. Are you free for dinner tonight?" Grace hesitated. Dinner felt personal, but this was business. "Sure, where?" "Do you like Italian?" She found herself smiling despite her better judgment. Who does not? The restaurant was elegant but not ostentatious, tucked into a quiet street downtown. Vincent was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table, and he stood when he saw her. He was not wearing a suit this time. Just dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look like smoke, and Grace felt suddenly aware of her own appearance in ways she usually did not bother with. "You look nice," he said simply, pulling out her chair. "Thank you." She sat, spreading out her tablet with the latest designs. "I think you are going to like what I have done with the courtyard spaces," but Vincent did not look at the tablet right away. "Can we order first?" "I promise I want to see everything, but I have been in meetings since 6 this morning and I am starving." Grace laughed, relaxing slightly. "Fair enough." They ordered, and as they waited for the food, the conversation drifted away from work. Vincent asked about her background, and Grace found herself telling him about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about her father who was a carpenter and taught her to see the bones of buildings, about putting herself through school on scholarships and stubbornness. "What about you?" she asked. "How does someone become a billionaire by 35, 36? He corrected with a slight smile. "And the short answer is that I got lucky with some early investments in renewable energy. The longer answer is that I worked myself half to death for 10 years and forgot what a personal life looked like." "Sounds familiar," Grace admitted. "My friends keep telling me I need balance. I keep telling them I will work on it later." "And do you? Work on it later?" "Never." She took a sip of wine. "I built something I am proud of. That takes sacrifice." Vincent studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever get lonely?" The question caught her off guard. It was too personal, too direct, but there was no judgment in his eyes, only curiosity. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I would rather be lonely than dependent. Dependent on someone else for happiness, for validation, for financial security." Grace set down her glass. "I watched my mother lose herself in my father. Not because he was a bad man, but because she made him her whole world. When he died, she did not know who she was anymore. I promised myself I would never do that." "Independence is not the same as isolation," Vincent said quietly. "You can be strong and still let people in." "Can you?" She challenged. "You just admitted you have no personal life." He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. "Fair point. Maybe we are both terrible at this." "Maybe," Grace agreed and found herself smiling back. The food arrived and they ate and talked, and somewhere in the middle of it, Grace realized she was enjoying herself. Vincent was smart and funny, self-deprecating in surprising ways. He told her about growing up in Boston, the son of a single mother who cleaned offices at night so he could go to private school during the day. About the chip on his shoulder that drove him to prove everyone wrong. "She died before she got to see any of this," he said, gesturing vaguely at the restaurant, the life he had built. "Sometimes I think about what she would say." "She would be proud," Grace said with certainty. "How do you know?" "Because you are not just making money. You are trying to do something with it. This housing project, the clean energy initiatives I read about, you could be sitting on a yacht somewhere, but you are not. Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and Grace felt heat rise in her cheeks. Then he smiled. "Should we look at those designs now?" They spent the next hour going through her plans, and Vincent asked questions that showed he had actually read the brief, that he understood what she was trying to accomplish. He suggested a few modifications, all of them good, and Grace made notes without feeling defensive. This was collaboration, not control. When they finally left the restaurant, it was nearly 11. Vincent walked her to her car, hands in his pockets, and Grace found herself not wanting the evening to end. "Thank you for dinner," she said. "And for the feedback. Thank you for your work. And for the conversation." He hesitated, then added, "I enjoyed tonight more than I expected to." Grace felt her heart do something complicated. "Me too. Would you like to do it again sometime, not for business, just to talk?" She should say no. She should keep this professional, keep the boundaries clear. But when she looked at Vincent, at the hopeful uncertainty in his eyes, she found herself nodding. "I would like that." His smile was worth it. Over the next month, they fell into a rhythm. Official meetings about the project happened at his office or hers, professional and productive. But there were also dinners, and a Saturday afternoon walking through the neighborhoods where the housing would be built, and a Sunday morning coffee that turned into lunch that turned into dinner. They talked about everything, books and politics and childhood dreams. Vincent told her about the pressure of running a company where thousands of people depended on him for their livelihoods. Grace told him about the terror and exhilaration of being solely responsible for her own success or failure. "I do not know how you do it alone," Vincent said one evening. They were at his place, a penthouse that was surprisingly warm despite its size, cooking dinner together. Or rather, Vincent was cooking while Grace sat on the counter and supervised. "I like alone," Grace said. "Alone means freedom. Alone also means if you fail, you have no one to catch you. If I fail, I deserve to fall." She said it matter-of-factly, but Vincent stopped chopping vegetables and looked at her. "That is a lonely way to live. It is an honest way to live." Grace took a sip of the wine he had poured her. "I have seen too many women give up their dreams for partnerships that did not work out. I will not be one of them." Vincent was quiet for a moment, then went back to cooking. "What if the partnership did work out? Then she gets lucky. But luck is not a strategy." He plated the pasta, brought it to the table, and they ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Vincent said, "My mother used to tell me that the strongest people are the ones who know when to ask for help." Your mother sounds wise. She was. She was also the most independent person I have ever met. Had to be, raising me on her own. But she had friends, a community. She let people support her and she supported them back. That is not weakness, Grace. That is strength. Grace set down her fork, feeling something uncomfortable twist in her chest. "Why does this matter to you?" "Because I care about you." Vincent said it simply, like it was obvious. "And I watch you carrying everything alone and I want to help. I do not need help. I know you do not need it. But maybe you could want it anyway." Grace stood abruptly, moving to the window. The city glittered below, millions of lights, millions of people, all connected in ways she had deliberately avoided. "Vincent, I need to be clear about something. I like spending time with you. But I am not going to change who I am. I am not going to become someone who needs you." She heard him move behind her, felt his presence at her back. "I do not want you to need me. I like who you are, Grace. Your strength, your vision, your absolute refusal to compromise on what matters to you. I am not trying to change that." "Then what are you trying to do?" "I am trying to love you." His voice was quiet but sure. "And I am trying to figure out if you will let me." Grace turned, and Vincent was right there, so close she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "I warned you. I am too independent. I know." He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so gentle it made her ache. "And I love your strength. I want to support it, not diminish it. But Grace, being independent does not mean you have to be alone. What if I do not know how to be any other way? Then we figure it out together." He cupped her face in his hands. "If you want to." Grace looked at him, at this man who had somehow slipped past every defense she had built, and felt terrified and exhilarated all at once. "I have never done this before. Not really." "Neither have I," Vincent admitted. "We can be terrible at it together." She laughed, and then he was kissing her, and Grace forgot why she had ever thought being alone was better than this. His arms came around her, solid and warm, and for once, she let herself lean into someone else's strength. They spent that night talking until dawn, curled up on his couch, exploring what this could be. Grace set boundaries, and Vincent respected everyone. She needed her space, her independence, her work. He understood. He had his own company to run, his own responsibilities. But they could have this too. They could have each other as long as it was a choice, not a dependency. "I am not going to be a girlfriend who shows up to all your events," Grace warned. "I hate those kinds of things." "Good, because I hate them too," Vincent said. "We can hate them together and leave early. I am not going to move in with you just because it is convenient. I would not want you to, not unless you wanted to for your own reasons. I am going to keep running my company exactly how I want. I would not respect you if you did not." He kissed her forehead. "Grace, I am not trying to absorb you into my life. I am trying to build something with you where we both get to be who we are." She pulled back to look at him. "How are you real?" Vincent smiled. "I could ask you the same thing." The housing project moved forward, and it was the best work Grace had ever done. Vincent challenged her, supported her, and gave her the resources to exceed her own vision. When obstacles came up, he cleared the path but never took over. When she struggled with a design element, he listened and asked questions but never told her what to do. He treated her like the expert she was, and Grace found herself trusting him in ways she had never trusted anyone. They kept their relationship quiet at first, both of them preferring privacy. But word got out anyway, because of course it did. Grace braced herself for the comments, the assumptions that she had slept her way to the contract. But Vincent shut that down hard and fast, making it clear in every meeting and every public statement that Grace Rosewood was the lead architect because she was the best, period. "You did not have to do that," Grace said after he gave a particularly pointed interview to a business magazine. "Yes, I did," Vincent said firmly. "Your reputation matters. Anyone who thinks you are here because of our relationship is an idiot, and they can find somewhere else to work." Grace kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. "Thank you. Always." 6 months into the project, Grace's firm got an offer from a major development company. They wanted to acquire her, make her a division head, give her access to resources she could only dream of. It was everything she should want. She turned them down without hesitation. "Are you sure?" Maya asked, looking at the offer letter with wide eyes. "Grace, this is life-changing money." "I am sure." Grace filed the letter away. "I did not build this to sell it." But later that night, lying in Vincent's arms after they had made love, she felt the doubt creep in. "Am I an idiot for turning down that offer?" Vincent ran his fingers through her hair, a gesture that had become familiar, comforting. "Do you think you are?" "I do not know. It was a lot of money. A lot of security. You have security, you built it yourself. But what if I fail? What if the firm goes under and I have nothing? Then you will build something else." Vincent shifted so he could look at her. "Grace, you are one of the most talented architects I have ever met. You will always land on your feet. But more than that, you will always be you. That company wanted to buy your name and your talent and turn you into an employee. You would have been miserable." "How do you know?" Because I know you. He kissed her softly. And I love who you are. Not who you could be if you compromised everything that matters to you. Grace felt tears prick her eyes. I love you too. I do not think I have said that yet. You have not. Vincent smiled, and it was the happiest she had ever seen him. I was wondering if you ever would. I kept thinking it would make me weak, vulnerable. And does it? Grace thought about it, really thought. No, it makes me terrified, but not weak. Good. Vincent pulled her closer. Because you are the strongest person I know, and I am so damn proud to be with you. They spent the next year building, both the housing project and their relationship. Grace learned, slowly, to let Vincent support her without feeling like she was losing herself. He celebrated her wins and listened during her losses, offered advice when she asked for it, and backed off when she needed space. And Vincent, who had spent so many years building his empire alone, learned what it was like to have a partner who understood the pressure, who did not resent his work because she had her own. The first housing complex opened on a bright Saturday in October. Grace stood with Vincent, watching families move into homes they could actually afford, and felt pride swell in her chest. This was what she had wanted to build. Not monuments to ego, but spaces where people could live with dignity. You did this, Vincent said quietly, his hand finding hers. We did this, Grace corrected. I could not have managed the scale without you, but it was your vision, your design, your heart. He squeezed her hand. I just made sure you had what you needed to make it happen. Grace looked at him, this man who had somehow become her best friend and her lover and her partner without ever asking her to be less than she was. Thank you for understanding what I needed, always. That night, Vincent took her to the same Italian restaurant where they had their first not-quite business dinner. They sat at the same table, and Grace felt a wave of nostalgia for the people they had been a year ago, both so sure they were better off alone. I have something I want to ask you, Vincent said after they ordered. Grace felt her heart start to pound. Okay. He reached across the table, taking both her hands in his. I love you. I love your strength, your passion, your absolute refusal to settle for anything less than what you believe in. I love the way you challenge me and inspire me and make me want to be better. And I want to spend the rest of my life supporting you, celebrating you, and loving you exactly as you are. He let go of one hand to pull out a small box, and Grace felt tears spring to her eyes. I am not asking you to change, Vincent continued. I am not asking you to need me or depend on me. I am asking if you want to choose me every day the way I choose you. Grace Rosewood, will you marry me? Grace looked at the ring, a simple platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated. Then she looked at Vincent, at the hope and love in his eyes, and felt something break open in her chest. All those years of protecting herself, of keeping people at arm's length, of believing that independence meant isolation. And here was someone who loved her strength, who wanted to support it, who understood that being together did not mean losing herself. Yes, she said, laughing through tears. Yes, I will marry you. Vincent slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he was around the table, pulling her up, kissing her while the other diners applauded. Grace did not care. She was too busy feeling happy, genuinely happy in a way she had not known she could be. I love you, she whispered against his lips. I love you so much. I love you too, Vincent said. My strong, independent, brilliant wife-to-be. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Grace wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers, and Vincent looked at her like she was the only person in the world. They wrote their own vows, and when it was Grace's turn, she spoke from the heart. I used to think independence meant being alone, that needing anyone was weakness. But you taught me that the strongest thing I could do was choose to share my life with someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves what he sees. You support my strength without trying to take it over. You celebrate my wins without needing them to be yours. You give me space when I need it and show up when I ask. Vincent, you are not my other half. You are my partner, my equal, my choice. And I choose you today and every day. There was not a dry eye in the room, including Vincent's. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Grace, you walked into my office with fire in your eyes and a portfolio full of dreams, and you changed my life. You showed me what real strength looks like. Not dominance or control, but confidence and conviction and the courage to be exactly who you are. I do not want to complete you or fix you or change you. I want to stand beside you and cheer you on and love you with everything I have. You are my partner, my inspiration, my home. And I choose you today and every day. They kissed as husband and wife, and Grace felt complete in a way that had nothing to do with needing someone else, and everything to do with choosing to share her life with someone who understood her. The years that followed were not perfect. They fought sometimes, usually when Grace felt like Vincent was being overprotective, or when Vincent felt like Grace was shutting him out. But they learned to communicate, to trust that they could weather the storms without losing themselves or each other. Grace's firm grew, but she kept it deliberately manageable, turning down opportunities that would have made her rich but miserable. Vincent supported every decision, even the ones that meant less profit, because he understood that her integrity was not for sale. And when his company faced a crisis that required him to travel constantly for 3 months, Grace held down the fort, reminded him to sleep and eat, and never once complained about his absence, because she understood what it meant to be consumed by work. 2 years after they married, Grace discovered she was pregnant. She had never been sure she wanted children, and the news sent her into a spiral of anxiety. What if she was not good at it? What if she resented the loss of freedom? What if she became like her mother, losing herself in family? Vincent found her sitting in the nursery they had just started to set up, staring at the walls with tears streaming down her face. "Talk to me," he said, sitting beside her on the floor. "What if I am terrible at this?" Grace whispered. "What if I cannot balance everything? What if I lose myself?" Vincent took her hand. "You are not going to lose yourself. You are going to make room for someone else. And yes, it will be hard. Yes, things will change. But Grace, you are the strongest person I know. You will figure it out. What if I do not want to figure it out? What if I want to keep my life exactly how it is? Then we will figure that out too." Vincent squeezed her hand. "This is your body, your choice. I will support whatever you decide. But if you are afraid of becoming your mother, remember that you are not her. You have your own career, your own identity, your own support system. You are not going to disappear just because you have a child." Grace leaned against him, feeling the fear slowly ebb. "I am so scared." "I know, I am scared too." Vincent wrapped his arm around her. "But we will do it together. And if you want to go back to work 2 weeks after she is born, we will hire help. If you want to take 6 months off, we can do that too. There is no right way to do this, Grace. We will make our own way." She looked at him, this man who had proven over and over that he loved her exactly as she was. "You really mean that? Every word?" Their daughter, Elena, was born on a sunny morning in May. She had Vincent's gray eyes and Grace's determined chin, and from the moment Grace held her, she was lost. But it was not the losing herself that she had feared. It was finding new depths of love she had not known existed. Vincent was an incredible father, splitting night shifts, learning to change diapers and soothe colic with the same focus he brought to running his company. They hired a nanny for when Grace needed to work, but Vincent made sure his schedule was flexible enough to be present. He had missed his own mother's last years because of work, and he refused to make the same mistake with his daughter. Grace went back to work after 3 months, but differently than before. She worked from home more, brought Alina to the office sometimes, learned to integrate rather than separate. It was not always easy. There were days when she felt torn between the demands of motherhood and the drive of her career. But Vincent was always there, reminding her that she did not have to be perfect, that she could ask for help, that being a mother did not erase being an architect. "I am proud of you," he said one night after Alina was finally asleep. They were curled up on the couch, exhausted but content. "You are managing to be exactly who you want to be while making room for her. That takes incredible strength." "I could not do it without you," Grace admitted. The old me would have hated saying that, but it is true. "We could not do it without each other," Vincent corrected. "That is what partnership means." When Alina was 2, Grace designed a community center that won national awards. When she was 4, Vincent stepped back from day-to-day operations at his company to spend more time with his family. They made decisions together, compromised when needed, but never at the cost of their own identities. Grace's firm celebrated its 15th anniversary with a retrospective of her work, and Vincent threw her a party that brought together everyone whose lives she had touched. Clients and colleagues, friends and family, all gathered to celebrate what she had built. Grace stood in the middle of it, Alina on her hip, Vincent at her side, and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. "Thank you," she told him later after everyone had gone home, "for all of this, for seeing me." "Thank you for letting me," Vincent said, "for trusting me enough to share your life." "I still hate needing people," Grace said with a smile, "but I am getting better at wanting them. That is all I ever asked for." They had 2 more children over the years, a son named Marcus who had Grace's stubbornness and another daughter, Sophia, who was pure joy. Grace juggled motherhood and her career with the same determination she brought to everything, and Vincent supported her every step of the way. He never made her feel guilty for working late or traveling for projects. He picked up the slack without resentment, because he knew her work mattered to her, and therefore it mattered to him. On their 10th wedding anniversary, they went back to that Italian restaurant, leaving the kids with Vincent's very capable assistant and her husband for the night. 10 years, Grace said, raising her wine glass. "I cannot believe it." "I can." Vincent clinked his glass against hers. "I knew from the first time you told me you were too independent that I wanted to spend my life proving you could be both. Both independent and loved." Vincent reached across the table, taking her hand. "You never had to choose, Grace. You just had to find someone who understood that." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. 10 years, and he could still make her cry with the simplicity of his understanding. "I love you. I love the life we built. I love that you let me be myself. I love you too. And I am so proud of everything you have accomplished, not just the buildings and the awards, but the way you have learned to let people in. The way you have become an incredible mother while never losing sight of who you are. You inspire me every single day." They went home that night and made love slowly, tenderly, with the kind of intimacy that came from years of knowing each other's bodies and hearts. Afterward, lying in Vincent's arms, Grace thought about the woman she had been when they met. So afraid of losing herself, so convinced that independence meant isolation. And now here she was, deeply in love, surrounded by family, still herself but somehow more. "What are you thinking?" Vincent murmured, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That you were right," Grace said. "Being strong enough to ask for help, to accept support, that is not weakness, it is strength." "You taught me that," Vincent said. "I was so busy building my empire alone that I forgot what it was like to have a partner. You showed me that I could be strong and still lean on someone." "We taught each other," Grace corrected. She turned to face him, cupping his jaw in her hand. "Thank you for loving my independence, for supporting my strength instead of trying to diminish it." "Always," Vincent said and kissed her. The years continued to pass, full of the chaos and beauty of raising children, building careers, and maintaining a marriage. Alina grew into a thoughtful teenager who wanted to study environmental science. Marcus discovered a passion for music and spent hours composing. Sophia remained the wild heart of the family, full of questions and adventures. Grace watched her children grow and marveled at how they were each becoming their own people, independent and loved, just like she had learned to be. Vincent's company continued to thrive, branching into new areas of sustainable development. Grace's firm became known internationally for designs that prioritized people and planet over profit. They worked together sometimes, combining their expertise on projects that mattered to both of them. But they also maintained separate professional identities, respecting that they were individuals first, partners second. On their 20th anniversary, their children threw them a surprise party. Friends and family filled their home, and Grace stood beside Vincent, listening to speeches about their love story, and felt almost embarrassed by how happy she was. "You two are relationship goals," one of Vincent's colleagues said, slightly drunk and very sincere. "How do you make it work?" Grace and Vincent exchanged a look, and she saw the humor dancing in his eyes. "We stay stubborn," Grace said. "We both refuse to compromise on who we are, so we had to build a relationship that supports that. And we choose each other," Vincent added, "every single day, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard." Later, after everyone had left and the kids were asleep, Grace and Vincent sat on their back porch, looking at the stars. 20 years, Grace said wonderingly. "Remember when I told you I was too independent?" "I remember thinking that I loved your strength and wanted to support it," Vincent said. "Best decision I ever made. Asking me to marry you. No, believing that you could be independent and in love, that those things were not mutually exclusive." Vincent pulled her close. "You proved me right every single day." Grace rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. She thought about all the ways he had supported her over the years. Not by taking over or fixing her problems, but by giving her space when she needed it, encouragement when she doubted, and unwavering belief in her abilities. He had never tried to make her smaller so he could feel bigger. Instead, he had celebrated her strength and matched it with his own. "I could not have done any of this without you," Grace said quietly. "The career, the kids, the life. You made it possible by making it safe to be myself." "You made it possible by being brave enough to try," Vincent countered. "I just showed up and loved you." "Just," Grace repeated with a laugh. "Vincent, showing up and loving me the way you do, seeing me the way you do, that is everything." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from decades of knowing each other. Grace thought about the housing project that had brought them together, how it had grown into a series of developments across multiple cities. She thought about the community centers and schools and parks she had designed, all of them serving people who needed beauty and function in their lives. She thought about her children, growing up watching their mother pursue her dreams without apology and their father support her without ego. What kind of partners would they choose, having seen this modeled? "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked the same question he had asked 1,000 times over the years. "That I am grateful," Grace said simply. "For you, for this, for everything." Vincent kissed the top of her head. "Me too." They sat under the stars, two independent people who had chosen to build a life together, and Grace felt complete. Not because Vincent completed her, but because she had learned that being strong enough to stand alone also meant being strong enough to choose not to. And in choosing Vincent, in choosing their family, in choosing this life, she had not lost her independence. She had expanded it to include love. The future stretched out before them, full of possibility. Alina would go to college soon, and then Marcus, and eventually Sophia. The house would get quieter. Grace's firm would continue to grow. Vincent's company would evolve. They would become grandparents someday, gray and weathered but still standing together. There would be challenges and changes, losses and celebrations. But through it all, Grace knew they would choose each other. Not because they needed to, but because they wanted to, and that made all the difference. Years later, when Grace was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award in architecture, Vincent sat in the front row with their children and grandchildren, beaming with pride. When she gave her acceptance speech, Grace talked about the importance of designing spaces that served people, about sustainability and beauty and function. But she also talked about partnership, about what it meant to find someone who supported your strength instead of feeling threatened by it. "I used to think independence meant doing everything alone," she said, looking directly at Vincent. "But I learned that true independence is having the strength to choose your partnerships wisely, to find people who lift you up instead of holding you back. I found that in my husband, who has spent 30 years proving that you can love someone fiercely while still respecting their autonomy. This award is mine, but this life, this beautiful life we built, that belongs to both of us." The standing ovation lasted for minutes, but Grace only had eyes for Vincent, who was wiping tears from his face and mouthing, "I love you." That night, back in their hotel room, Vincent held her close and said, "I am so proud of you, of everything you have built and become." "We built it together," Grace said, the same argument they had been having for 3 decades. "I could not have done it without your support." "You could have," Vincent said, "but I am grateful you did not have to." Grace kissed him, pouring decades of love and gratitude into it. "I love you. I love that you never tried to make me smaller. I love that you celebrated my independence even when it meant giving me space. I love that you understood what I needed before I did." "I love you too," Vincent said. "I love your strength and your stubbornness and your absolutely unshakable belief in yourself. You made me better. You made our children better. You made the world better." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, and afterward, Grace lay in Vincent's arms and felt utterly content. She had built an incredible career, raised amazing children, and maintained her independence through it all. But more than that, she had learned that being strong did not mean being alone. It meant being brave enough to choose partnership on your own terms. When Grace was 70, she finally retired from active practice, turning her firm over to a protege she had mentored for years. Vincent had retired a decade earlier, and they spent their days traveling, visiting their children and grandchildren, and working on passion projects. Grace designed a tiny house for a homeless shelter. Vincent funded a scholarship program for kids from single-parent homes. They volunteered together, gave back together, and continued to choose each other every single day. On their 50th wedding anniversary, their family threw them a massive celebration. 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and a lifetime of friends gathered to honor their love. Grace stood with Vincent, looking at the faces of all the people whose lives they had touched, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. 50 years, Vincent said wonderingly. Where did the time go? Into building this, Grace said, gesturing at their family, their legacy, the life they had created together. Into loving each other and raising our kids and making our corner of the world better. That is where the time went. Best investment I ever made, Vincent said, pulling her close. Loving you. Best risk I ever took, Grace countered. Letting you. Their youngest grandson, who was filming everything on his phone, asked them for advice. How do you make love last 50 years? Grace and Vincent looked at each other, and once again, that silent communication that came from decades of practice passed between them. You choose each other, Grace said. Not just once, but every day, especially on the hard days. And you let each other be who you are, Vincent added. You do not try to change or fix or control. You support and celebrate and trust. Also, Grace said with a smile, you find someone who loves your strength instead of feeling threatened by it, someone who wants to support it, not diminish it. Vincent kissed her temple. 50 years later, and you are still warning people that you are too independent. 50 years later, and you are still telling me you love my strength, Grace countered. Because I do, Vincent said simply. Because it is true. They danced that night, surrounded by the family they had built, the life they had created, the love they had chosen. Grace rested her head on Vincent's shoulder and thought about the woman she had been at 29, so certain that independence and love were incompatible. How wrong she had been. How beautifully, wonderfully wrong. Thank you, she whispered to Vincent, for everything, for loving me exactly as I am. Thank you, Vincent said, for letting me, for trusting me enough to share your life. I would not have wanted to share it with anyone else, Grace said, and it was the absolute truth. They continued to dance, two independent souls who had chosen to intertwine without losing themselves, and Grace felt complete. Not because she needed Vincent to be whole, but because she had been brave enough to want him anyway. And in that wanting, in that choosing, she had found something deeper than independence or dependence. She had found partnership, equality, love that lifted instead of limited. As the music played and their family celebrated around them, Grace Rosewood looked at Vincent Vaughn, her husband of 50 years, and felt grateful for every single day. For every argument and compromise, every challenge and triumph, every moment of choosing each other. She had built an incredible career, raised amazing children, maintained her independence, and loved fiercely. She had done it all, not by doing it alone, but by finding someone who understood that supporting her strength was the greatest gift he could give. And Vincent had given it, every single day for 50 years. He had loved her independence, celebrated her strength, and supported her dreams without ever trying to make them his own. He had been her partner, her equal, her choice, and she had been his. That, Grace thought as Vincent spun her across the dance floor, was what real love looked like. Not losing yourself in someone else, but finding someone who made you more yourself. Not giving up independence, but choosing to share it with someone who understood its value. Not becoming dependent, but becoming interdependent, supporting each other while remaining whole. I love you, she told Vincent, the words as true now as they had been 30 years ago, 50 years ago, that first time she said them. I love you too, Vincent said, and Grace heard the weight of 50 years behind those 3 words. 50 years of choosing each other, supporting each other, loving each other through everything life threw at them. As the song ended and their family applauded, Grace and Vincent stood together, still standing, still strong, still independent and deeply, beautifully in love. And Grace knew that was the greatest achievement of all, not the building she had designed or the awards she had won, but this life. This love. This partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering support. She had warned him she was too independent. He had loved her strength and wanted to support it. And together, they had built something extraordinary, not despite her independence, but because of it. Not in spite of their strength, but because they had learned to combine it into something even stronger. That was their legacy. Not just the children and grandchildren, not just the companies and buildings, but the model they had created. A partnership where both people remained whole, where strength was celebrated, not feared, where independence and love coexisted in perfect balance. As the party continued around them and Vincent held her close, Grace smiled. She had lived the life she wanted, loved the man she chose, and never once lost herself in the process. That was everything she had ever wanted, and so much more than she had ever dreamed possible.